Hello, friends. I'm your host, Dr. Dave Layton, and thank you for joining me in our journey to hope. It is my desire through this podcast to bring you information about how to discover, sustain, or perhaps regain hope. In this episode, I'm speaking with a new friend, Valarie Busler. Valarie, did I say your name right?
Yes, sir. You got it right, Dave.
Okay, good. Valarie has a wonderful story to share of how she's bringing hope to three children who might not have had opportunities for hope except through her family. And I'm going to let her tell us about herself and how she is bringing hope to these children. Well, hello, Valarie.
Hello, Dave. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being here.
The honor is mine. It truly is, and I'm glad that we were able to make contact. It came out of the blue, but that's wonderful. I'm just glad we did. Well, let's begin by you telling the audience just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go into talking about how you're bringing hope.
Okay. Well, my name is Valarie Busler, as Dave said, and my husband Forrest and I have been married almost 21 years, and we were both already followers of Christ when we met, and we've spent our marriage always trying to discern where God is calling us. For the first decade of our marriage, that looked like getting through medical training. We're both physicians by training. We did some short-term mission work and things like that. And we're hoping to be able to start a family and walked through a period of infertility and lost our unborn child. And then our second decade of marriage kind of shifted to expanding our family through adoption, which is where God led us.
Okay. You said that you were both in medical training, or you're both doctors, or?
Yes, sir. So my husband is a practicing pathologist,
Okay.
and we adopted our first child when I was completing my fellowship. And so I never practiced independently. I stayed home with him after I finished my
Okay.
training.
Okay. Wow. That was a challenge in and of itself.
Oh, it was definitely. It may have helped prepare us though for the challenge of
Well,
raising multiple children with different needs.
yeah, certainly. Um, so you've adopted these three children,
Yes,
and
sir.
they all three have some special needs.
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, that's amazing. We'll often think of folks adopting one child with special needs, but adopting three of them. Were the three related to each other, the children, or were they independent?
They are not biologically related.
Okay.
Our first two are from Armenia, and our third child is from Georgia.
Okay. Okay. Um, well, can you share a little bit about the story of these children?
Definitely, yes. So as I mentioned, we had gone through about 10 years of infertility and had an unexpected surprise pregnancy that I ended up losing. And so I was just really grieving that very hard. And in that time of grief, really God just gave me a vision, for lack of a better term for it.
Sure.
Um, I was actually standing on the beach at sunset, taking in the beauty of his creation, and two concepts came to me: special needs and adoption. And I was really grieving too hard to even consider trying to bring a child into our family at that point.
Okay.
And so, but at the same time, it was a great comfort to me. And so I just tucked that away in my heart until it was time, until we were ready, and God led us further into that journey.
Okay.
And so when we started looking, we were looking specifically to adopt a child with Down syndrome, and we investigated both domestic and international adoptions. And we ended up finding a picture of a 2.5-year-old boy with Down syndrome on a waiting child list. He was listed through an organization called Reese's Rainbow, and they advocate for adoption of children with special needs across the world. And so we had no idea where he was from, literally where he was in the world. And Reese's Rainbow put us in touch with the adoption agency that had his file. And we found out he was in Armenia.
Okay.
And to adopt from Armenia, well, first of all, I knew basically nothing about the country of Armenia. So I had to start learning about it. And in order to adopt from Armenia, you have to take 2 trips. And my husband said, oh, we can't take 2 trips to Armenia. But that's what God wanted us to do. And so we ended up doing that. And then while we were on our second trip to adopt him and bring him home, we were visiting with him in the orphanage. And a nanny came out cleaning up from a meal, and this little boy was following behind her. And my husband and I just looked up at each other, and God kept this little boy on our heart, and we had to go back and adopt him.
Yeah.
And so that's how we got our second child.
Okay.
Um, but in the process of adopting that second child, COVID hit.
Mm.
And Armenia, actually adoptions shut down all across the world for a period of time, but Armenia ended up in a war also. And so they were, obviously the government was very occupied with that. And we didn't know if the adoptions would open back up in Armenia. They started opening up in other countries and not Armenia. So we were considering switching programs and, started looking at other children in other countries and found our daughter in Georgia. Well, you can't have 2 international adoptions going at once. So we didn't want to, we still held out hope for adopting our second son, and Armenia opened shortly after that. So we proceeded with his adoption, but then once he came home and got settled, then we pursued adopting our daughter, whom we had found while we were waiting during COVID. So it's kind of one led to another in a way. Just, God just kept leading us down that path.
Wow. I, I don't, I can only imagine some of the emotions that you were going through. You saw this child and sounds like your heart just like grabbed onto that.
Yes.
I suspect there was a little bit of a sense of disappointment, maybe desperation, the idea that, oh no, this child needs to be out of that environment and we can offer this child a life that would not have otherwise. That's amazing. By the way, I want to share, I was raised in an orphanage back in the 50s and 60s. And I remember it was kind of an odd thing. Sometimes us children would be considered for adoption or foster parents. And they had this room. It was kind of a sitting room, I guess you could say. It had some casual furniture in it, and they would clean us up and get us all nice and shiny and dressed up, and then we would go in and meet the prospective parents, and in my case, I was never selected, which was okay. Most of us in that home had parents, by the way. The parents at that time were not able to take care of us, and so that was the process that went through. And I don't want to go into all the detail. That's not about me, but I can only understand from a child's perspective. Here's somebody that is interested in me, and so from their side, there's probably that feeling too of, I don't want to say desperation or whatever. I don't know if that's the emotion, but hopefulness that somebody's going to choose them to be a child with them.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's so important for me to hear, a child's perspective. My children aren't able to very effectively communicate, their feelings and what the process was like for them, and I can only explain, from my perspective.
Yeah, sure. By the way, I was eventually taken out of the orphanage by an uncle and raised, my uncle and aunt, and raised as a foster son for a couple of years. And then my maternal grandmother adopted us. I had a sister and myself. So anyway, you have an understanding of hope. You know what hope is from your perspective and how sometimes that hope is challenged. And then you also have experience where that hope was fulfilled. And you've also helped someone else obtain hope. So I'd like to kind of explore that a little bit, because There's a lot of folks that say, where do I begin? What can I do? What happens if it doesn't happen like I'd like for it to? Those sorts of things. So how do you understand hope? And how is your relationship with these children bringing them hope?
Well, I think as Christians, my understanding of hope is anchored in the promises that God gives us through
Hmm.
Jesus. And Scripture is filled with those promises, and it's not just about how things will be after Jesus comes back. I mean, he promises us so many things now, peace and joy and just gifts in a daily relationship with Jesus. But it can be easy to forget that when you're in dark times, when you feel
Yes.
like your hope is being challenged. I know, in dark times that I faced, there's a verse in Habakkuk that just really helped me hold on to hope. It's Habakkuk 3:17 and 18. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. Just holding on to who God is, even when it looks like everything around us is just devastating or devastated.
Yeah.
Um, that verse really helped me a lot.
Excuse me. I love the book of Habakkuk because as Habakkuk is starting out, he's saying, are you not paying attention, God? Do you not see all this terrible things going around in our world? And I talk about how Habakkuk could be reading our headlines by all that was going on, and God reminded him, oh yeah, I'm in charge. Don't you worry about it. And I love it where he basically says, you wouldn't believe it if you saw what I was doing. So yeah, Habakkuk 3:17 and 18. Okay, great. I often ask folks, about different Bible verses that come to mind when they're thinking about hope. And yeah, our Lord's in control. He's not going to cut us off. I like what you said too, by the way, that we know God is faithful, but we see that now in this life if we'll look. Sometimes folks don't know how to look or where to look, and then he's faithful to his promises to those of us that are his children. So,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
great. And so you're bringing hope to these children. Talk about that just a little bit, please.
Well, I'm trying to. I'm definitely an imperfect parent. And I guess one of the ways we have hope in our family is when we make mistakes. When I make mistakes,
Oh,
I
yeah.
I say I'm sorry. And they are so good about forgiving. And I always tell them, you're being like Jesus when you forgive.
Okay.
But I hope that they are, finding hope in having a family, in having a church family. They have a church family that just embraces them and loves them so dearly. And then in having, a place to go to school. Our boys, were not able to go to school in their home country. Our daughter actually was. Um, but just having that opportunity to be with other children, to be with their neurotypical peers, to be taught, to have someone show them like you are worth being taught, you are worth our
Hmm.
attention and our time and our love, and I know that where they are in their schools that they are loved and accepted. They have friends and their teachers love them. So yes, I hope that they are finding hope and seeing God's love in many different places in their life.
Okay, good. You said that the three children have various degrees of learning disabilities.
Yes.
Okay, so I can see where that would have been a challenge just in a normal situation. Man, there's that word normal again. I got to learn. I need to learn a better word. In those situations where we have children in a classroom, if a child has some kind of a difference, especially a disability of some kind, all too many times they get kind of pushed off to the side. Maybe teacher doesn't mean to, but the teacher might not be prepared or
Yes.
understand from not having education or training in that area. So it sounds though like the children are in a really good environment. What is the name of that school? Is it the Solly?
Yes, so my two older children are at Lipscomb Academy. It's a private Christian school here in Nashville.
Uh-huh.
And Lipscomb Academy started a special needs program called the Solly School in 2019. And that was the year that our first son, he was the only one we had at that time, and he was starting pre-K. And so he was actually the first student at the Solly School and the only student for a year and a half. And then they added a second student that second semester of the second year. And then the third year jumped to 13 students, and we have 14 now. And so two of those students are my two boys.
Okay.
And then my daughter is at our public school, just a couple blocks away from our house.
Okay.
And just finding the right place for each one was a tremendous challenge, but we feel very blessed that all three of them are in a really good place and where they really need to be.
Okay. And so they're able to gain um, uh, knowledge and skills, socialization, all those kinds of things that we would expect other children to receive.
Yes, yes. So they are included in the general ed classroom and able to participate in all the special classes, like music and art and technology, right along with their peers. And then they also get the support that they need and the special one-on-one, they get one-on-one instruction with a special ed teacher. The boys do at the Solly School, get one-on-one instruction because they're not at the same level as their grade level peers. Um,
Okay.
one reason because of intellectual disability, but also because of being in an orphanage. Our first son was 4.5 when he was adopted. Our second son was actually 11.5 when he was adopted and
Oh,
had no
wow.
prior education.
Mm.
So there's just a lot of ground that you need to make up
Mhm.
for there. So they get that support and that one-on-one education that they need.
Wow. 11 and a half. There were a lot of things already formed, as you know, from child development.
Yes.
Some things had to be overcome and relearned or unlearned. Wow, what a
And
challenge that was.
he is the little miracle. And they're all miracles, but just given that he was so old when he came home, it really is amazing how
Okay,
well adapted he is.
okay. I appreciate people that are in that field. That is just such a special gift that they have and share with us. By the way, I have a previous guest that is a advocate for education for foster children, and I did not know that there was any kind of a deficiency in that area. But what she talked about was how sometimes foster children they get moved around, and so they kind of fall through gaps, and so she advocates on behalf of the children to make sure that they're getting everything other children are receiving in terms of education and all of those associated things. So I can see where that might be a problem with any child that would be considered a special needs child.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, to try to bring them along. Uh, and it's amazing how children are resilient, and
You really are.
they they will blossom, they will grow. And our role of helping them. And that kind of takes me back to the idea of hope. We're giving them that view of the future. There is a future. And that's what hope is all about in many cases.
And
Okay,
not only
great.
do we
Hmm.
help them, but we get the privilege of watching it too. We
Oh,
get the
yeah.
privilege of getting to see that and see the changes in them and they bring us hope.
Oh, sure. Sure. Wow. I talk to people about hope, and they say, well, okay, that's great. I talk about you want to build hope in yourself, then you get out of yourself. You help others, and you look to others how you can bring them along. And so you've done that, and very clearly demonstrates that you're, as you said, they bring you hope, yeah, by reaching out to others. Wow. What else? I'm enjoying listening to this. This is a great story.
Oh, wow. Well, I do. I really love to share Reese's Rainbow too, because
Sure.
that's how we found our children. And they do amazing work in advocating for children with special needs across the world who are in need of adoption, and they raise money to help provide grants for families who need that financial support because adoption is expensive. Um, and another special thing that they do is they have a reunion for those of us families who have adopted, who've
Okay.
found our children through Reese's Rainbow. And it's just such a special time. And that brings us hope. Just
Okay.
getting together with other families who are
Hmm.
like ours, other families who have adopted children with special needs internationally. And you mentioned something about being impressed that we have three. I mean, when we get together a union, we're one of the small families. I mean, some of the families have, you know, 6, 8, 12,
Wow.
15 children, and sometimes it's a mixture of biological and adopted, but
Uh-huh.
it's such a beautiful thing to see all these families and all the diversity and just this commonality that we have. And it brings us hope to come together with one another and just celebrate.
All right. I'm going to put the information about some of this on the show notes so if folks are interested, they can check it out. What was the name of the adoption agency?
It's Reese's Rainbow, and I can send you the link.
Okay. Yes, we'll get that. Okay. You know, one of the other things I ask or teach people about hope is remember when Moses was commissioned by God to go back to Egypt to free the Israelites, and Moses objected, who am I, whatever, and finally the Lord says, what's in your hands? And, he looked down and said, the staff. And so I like to tell people, hey, what's in your hands? God's going to gift you in some way, and more than one way often. And so God gives us the ability. So what's in your hands? And you have discovered through your compassionate heart that you had anyway in the medical profession, but the idea then I can use this to help these children. You have turned what a lot of folks understandably would say a negative situation about not being able to have a family of your own to now making it a very positive thing. And I appreciate that. Yes, I'm heaping praises on you, but thank you for what you do.
Well, it's something I never expected, and it's
Yeah,
something that God did for us.
yeah.
And I like what you said about Moses. I'm going to hold on to that.
Okay.
And God kind of did something similar with me and with our first son. It was actually really challenging when he first came home. I mean, with all three of them, the first year is pretty rough, but um, I remember I was going through a pretty difficult time with my son, and I just felt like I was struggling, and every day just felt like a struggle. And I just kept saying, I can't do this. I can't do this. And like I would say it out loud so much that my son started saying it, which made me feel horrible. And finally one day, when I said I can't, God say to me, no, you can't, but I can.
Yeah,
And that just helped me so much. Like I just needed, I was stuck on I can't, and I needed to hear, but God can. And,
yeah,
that just gave me such hope to be reoriented toward the one who can and the one who called me to do it in the first place. He'll equip me if I just
yeah,
trust him to do so.
yeah. And if we keep our eyes open, keep our wits about us, we will discover those ways. Or, hey, I need to do something. I don't know what I can do. Help me find something, and
Yes.
it'll be there. I
Mhm.
believe that. Sometimes it does come as a surprise. I started this podcast out of a recovery from leukemia, and I didn't did not expect that. You know the hymn "Lead Me Gently Home." Lead me home, Father.
Yeah.
Lead me gently home.
Oh, yes.
We don't want things to hit us hard sometimes, but sometimes we need that hard hit. Okay. Anything else you'd like to share?
Well, I'll share another Bible verse that
Okay.
helped me. It's kind of a combination of two. So the first one comes from Isaiah 40, um, verse 28,
Okay.
where it's speaking of the Lord as the everlasting God and the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not grow faint or weary. And I love combining that with Isaiah 41:10, which says, I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you in my righteous right hand. So just thinking about, the God who created the heaven and earth and doesn't grow tired, he's the one who holds us.
Yeah.
So I just find a lot of strength and hope in that.
I appreciate you sharing that. Israel was going through a terrible time, separation, rejection, all those things, and God saying, I'm faithful.
Hmm.
We got this, especially when we turn to him. That's for sure. Okay. Well, Valarie, I have enjoyed talking with you, getting to know you. Keep me posted on how things are going. That's great. I just appreciate folks that are willing to give of themselves, to give others a chance. So that's great.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. It's been a joy for me as well, and
Okay, good.
I appreciate what you're doing.
Okay. Well, friends, thank you for joining Valarie and I as together we journey to hope. I trust in some small way we've encouraged you to discover, sustain, or regain hope through this effort. I invite you to contact me if you have questions or comments, or if you wish to share with me something you've experienced in your journey to hope. My email is info@ourjourneytohope.com. That's info@ourjourneytohope.com. And please share this podcast with someone whose hope is being challenged. I look forward to sharing more with you soon. Again, I'm Dr. Dave Layton, and thank you for listening. And until our next episode, remember, we give all glory to God our Father.